and welcome to the second episode of Common Sense Cafe. I'm Jeff.
I'm Kitman.
It's good to be with you again today. Some noted changes. You'll notice that there's a scenery change, cup change. He didn't like the cup with the flowers on it. If you saw the last episode, I picked that out for him, and it just goes to show that not every gift you pick out is exactly what the other person's looking for. Also, hopefully our sound's a little bit better. We've been doing some research on the technical end of broadcasting, so we put together a new sound, and we hope that it's a little more appealing, a little easier to listen to, and makes you want to tune in every time you hear us on the microphone. So we're Common Sense Cafe, just common sense ideas for overcoming obstacles and adversities is the subject matter that we approached the last time. Today we're going to go a little bit further. We'll continue the narrative, but we'll also be talking about how failure fits into success, which there's been a lot said about that, and our goal is not necessarily to rehash what's already been said, but to just give some common sense views on the subject of failure. Before we do, let's take a look back. We walked away after going back and listening to the conversation that we had last time. We walked away with 5 main points, 5 points that we looked at and said, okay, if I were looking at this fresh, and this is my first time to see this, these are the 5 main things I would walk away with. So let's talk about those just for a minute.
And I guess you want me to talk
I want you to talk about it.
Well, first of all, it's 9:30. My common sense usually doesn't wake up till 10, so
Yeah.
we'll see about this. Okay, well, number one thing was you had mentioned never be afraid to try.
Absolutely.
Just never be afraid to try. You got to get out there, try it. If you don't know, if you wait to know the end from the beginning, to know it perfectly, you'll never try anything. You know.
That's right. A little example of that, my youngest son, we had taken a vacation to Bull Shoals Lake, and there's cliffs you can jump off of. And they're not just super high, but they were fun for, 8-year-old and 10-year-old sons. And so the boys jumped out of the pontoon boat. Mom and Carrie stayed on. They raced up the hill, and I'm coming up behind them. When I get to the top, my oldest son and one of his friends are standing there, and I'm saying, now y'all, let me jump first, make sure everything's safe and everything. And I said, where's your little brother? Oh, he already jumped. I said, well, they were afraid to jump until somebody had jumped first, but he was never afraid to try. So you never can be, that's right, never be afraid to try. And number 2 was do what you can until you're able to do what you want to do.
Oh yeah, that's so important. I mean, it sounds obvious, but you just got to, desperation will make you do, as we talked about last time, we didn't plan to start out as carpenters or somewhat carpenters.
Yeah.
We were just trying to, and one thing I noticed from last time is we didn't really stress that the power, I said the power was off at the house when we were all living in that house. It wasn't because the power was off in the neighborhood.
Right, it wasn't an outage.
No, there was a bill.
There's a financial constraints is what it was. When you talk about do what you can until you can do what you want. In a pastoral role, a lot of times I encourage people, do the good thing until the God thing comes along. You can do good. Yeah. Everybody's always looking for the divine purpose. Well, it is good to search purpose, and it is good to work in your gifted area, but do the good thing till the God thing comes along. So it kind of fits in that.
Right. Number 3 was small beginnings lead to big opportunities.
Absolutely.
And that's all we can, I think that's all we can expect out of life is opportunities.
Yeah.
And most opportunities are made opportunities.
That's
you
a
don't
good point.
just fall into them. they're made in some respect or of another. You're at the right place at the right time. You were prepared for what opportunity came up. But small beginnings don't evaluate the whole your whole dream or your whole plan by how small it begins, because how small it begins has nothing to do with how big it will be in the end. I was thinking yesterday, this is kind of off topic, but I was thinking about a certain process that I was asked to put in place or to restructure at a bank not long ago. And the problem is that sometimes we look at the process and we want to evaluate what the outcome's going to be in the middle of the process.
Right.
Sometimes it has you cannot see the end
Right.
from when you're in the process. So small beginnings.
That's right. Years ago, we purchased a grocery store together. You kind of as a silent partner, and me running the grocery store. But anyway, you told me something then that has stuck with me and that I've repeated and I've used over and over and over in my life. And that is, you can't be, you were telling me you can't be a big store while you still have a small store mentality. You may be in the small process, in the small part of it, but you have to understand that every big thing starts from something small, and
Right.
that just stuck with me. So
That's right. Yeah. If you and last time we talked, I don't mean to just rehash everything we talked about last time, but we talked about not just not just dressing for success, but doing for success. You know, do bit more than your role requires.
Right.
So
Right.
the same thing you're talking about there. You know, if you got a small store mentality, and you're like, well, I'm just running a small store waiting for a big store to happen. It's never gonna happen.
That's exactly right. The fourth thing that we derived from that was you define what success is, not other people. Other people can't define your level, your success. Talking about the store and taking that analogy a little bit further, if the goal and dream was to be a small country store and to make X amount of dollars, and you reach that, it doesn't matter that you didn't go beyond that, because that was success that you had defined for yourself.
Right. Absolutely right.
And then number 5,
Just don't
give up.
Just
Yep.
keep on going. Keep on going.
Which is a great segue into the next portion of our talk, because we're going to be talking about failure today. The unpleasant part of success, the stepchild of success is failure. But failure fits into success,
Right.
and it fits in wonderful ways as you're moving toward your dream. So,
A great illustration of that, or a little picture of that, is I've been seeing it go around LinkedIn and Facebook and all, but it says, it just shows a graph, and it says most people think success looks like this, but success actually looks like this.
that's exactly right.
To get there, so that was a really good illustration I just gave. You know,
It was.
I made a blackboard, or whiteboard.
Whiteboard. You draw that out. Kind of picking up, we had talked about 8 years, and we had talked about going from an efficiency apartment, no lights, no money, no jobs, to you becoming extremely successful in Walmart, even to the point that at that time Sam Walton knew your name. He knew every man's name, but still he knew your name. And me moving in another direction in my as a sole proprietor of my own construction company. So we talked about that 8-year process, and we done a good job of talking about in 8 years we did this. But we didn't talk about was some of the low spots that came as we begin to progress up that graph.
Right.
So we can visit some of those today.
Yeah. Where you want to start? You want to?
Won't we start? Won't we start with? I'll tell a couple of my blunders and my failures, and then that way you go last, and they'll remember yours more than will mine. So,
Okay.
so some of the things that I did. So when you start a new business, it's a learning curve, it's a learning process. And I was learning two things at one time. I was still learning the trade and learning business. And they're two different things.
There are two different things.
And so I was learning both, or I was attempting to learn both, and I was learning very slow. And sometimes I would allow my knowledge of the trade to outrun my knowledge of business. I knew I could build this. I knew I could, if I had more people, I could build this. And so if I could build this and this, my concept was that's better, which it wasn't in business because I wasn't set up financially. I wasn't set up managerially to manage 2 crews or 3 crews or whatever. And so one of my deals, we had moved to Florida. Building was great. And we moved there after running a small kind of remodeling business in Louisiana. We moved to Florida. And when we moved to Florida,
This was in the 90s, right?
No, it was the 80s. It was 86. So the oil had kind of fallen off in Louisiana and things had kind of slowed down. But man, Florida was booming. And so we moved there, and I got connected with some general contractors, and I began building, and began building just one right after the other. The slabs were ready. We were building new homes. The slabs were ready, just one after the other. So we did kind of process this idea. Okay, well, I can break off into 2 crews. I can build two houses. Though I wouldn't make double the money, I would still make more money. And I thought, well, this is great. I can do this. The problem was, and I could build the house. The problem is that I did not have the manager skills. I did not have the underlying structure to support 2 crews, the ability to keep time cards right, to insurance coverages that you had to have and everything. And it quickly came to a bottleneck. And I didn't count on several things, and it came to a bottleneck to the point to where I basically had to drop one of the general contractors, lay off 1 crew because I just wasn't ready. And it was devastating to me because what was supposed to take me to the next level financially actually cost me money and set me back tremendously. One of the other mistakes that I'd made during that time, so one of the things that I did was I'd done too much too soon.
Yeah.
Another mistake that I made is I connected myself with the wrong people. So I brought in a partner, and this partner was knowledgeable of building, and I thought knowledgeable of business. And I turned a little bit of the business section over, and one day this gentleman comes back to the job site, and we are running 2 and 3 crews at this time. We built back up. We're running 2 or 3 crews. This guy comes in, and he's got like $10,000 worth of brand new equipment. Well, we need this, he says. And it was devastating. It was a move that was made that
He bought it out of the company
out of
money.
company money, and again it set us back. We were bare bones, as it were. We were an up and coming company, and at the same time the general contractor said instead of paying once every 2 weeks, we're going to pay once a month. And so, there's a money flow issue there.
Yeah.
And so being connected to the wrong person.
And you're covering payroll weekly.
That's exactly right. We're covering payroll weekly. And so it really set me back. So I had to dissolve that relationship and pull out of there. I picked up again, and I went back to the basics, the things that I knew best, and I love remodeling. And so I went back to remodeling. Here was the teaser though. I knew I could get the job if I underbid everybody else. And the problem was I was underbidding myself too. And so, these failures, I mean, there were several times where I really went back to the drawing board and had to start the company all over again.
Right.
And to move forward. In a minute, we'll talk about what happened, what I did during those failure times. Like I learned to evaluate things.
Yeah.
It was humiliating at times, and learned to develop character. And then also it taught me at times to double down my effort, my personal effort to see success.
Did you, now, when you're underbidding yourself, in other words, you're not making enough to even pay yourself.
Right. Not even wages. Not even real wages.
You're just coming in short. That you recognize pretty quick, right?
Absolutely.
I mean, it doesn't take a couple of weeks.
That's right.
Yeah.
You work 40 hours a week and you come home with $25.
Yeah. Pay all your people and you walk home and eat, they go out and go eat ramen noodles or
That's
something.
right.
But the other part of, you mentioned growing too fast. Was this part of it? Normally, in that process, you find that the first thing to suffer and the last thing to recognize is quality. You knew the quality when you were on had that one crew. You knew the quality of product you were putting out. But what about when you added more crews?
Absolutely. What we found out was, and one of the things that began to eat into my profits were I had to go back and redo a few things on jobs that I wasn't managing personally, day in and day out. And you can't manage as in the construction company. You can't physically be on each job every day and present the same quality of work that you want to present, because you have to trust other people.
And I'm sure the general contractor said, "Oh, I know you weren't there on this crew, so it's okay. Don't worry about it."
Right? The inspector said it won't last 5 years, but I know you didn't do it, so don't worry about it. No, we did. You're right. We found out.
Embarrassing, isn't it?
Yes, it is. You find out very quickly that, and it goes to my second failure. It goes to my second failure. I was connecting myself with the wrong people. In order to see that level of success, you really have to have a dream team around you.
Very important.
Yeah, and people who buy into your dream and know that helping you reach your dream is going to help them reach their dream. And so I didn't have that. It took me years before I learned that lesson and began to connect myself with the right people to see my dream come true. So,
Yeah, I didn't think about it before, but that has been a big part of my life too. In that, even in any kind of business, you've got to have great people working for you or with you, with the same direction,
right,
the same enthusiasm, passion, and quality, and all of that comes back to, I think, loyalty.
yeah,
If you don't have
Yeah.
loyal team members, you don't have a team.
right, yeah.
You got people, maybe everybody's working together to get to the same goal, but they're not a team.
That's exactly right. Which brings us back to what I learned from those failures was to evaluate. I even evaluated employees differently after my failures. I evaluated. I say employees. I evaluated potential employees differently, and I did look for those characteristics you're talking about. Are they going to be loyal? And do they have the same dream I have? Can they buy into my dream and help me develop my dream as they are developing their own dream? And if we could do that, then, and when you think about construction, a lot of people think, well, you just hire whoever comes up because you need warm bodies that can swing a hammer. But when you get into wanting to do quality work and to move up into a different level of reputation in the building community, you have to have people around you that can help support that and have the same goal and drive and desire that you do. So it did help me learn to evaluate potential employees, evaluate people I'm connected with. It made me evaluate my own pride, my own convictions, all of that stuff. Why was I doing what I was doing, which I feel now is just as important as what I do. Why am I doing what I do? So,
One thing I had to come to grips with was with the not having a loyal team from time to time, or not all members of the team were loyal, is I had to come to grips with, am I the kind of leader that that inspires loyalty?
and that is tricky. Yeah, am I the kind of leader that people want to follow?
Yeah.
And if
'Cause
you're not, then
Everybody, rightfully so, whether they're the leader of the plan or a crucial part in the plan that's having to do tasks to carry out the plan, everybody in the process and on the team, we may all be working for the same end goal, the same dream, but everyone is also have their own interest in mind.
mm-hmm.
It doesn't matter how we can be the nicest person in the world, but if my interest in business is not being fed, then there's a breakdown in leadership and management. There's a breakdown in my desire to follow or my desire to carry out my part of the plan.
That's exactly right. David, when David goes into the valley to fight Goliath, do you know what the first thing he asked was? He said, "What's in it for me?" He said, "What shall be done to the man that defeats this guy?" And they said, "Well, he'll marry the king's daughter." Well, she must have been a pretty good-looking girl, because he was on board right away. But yeah, absolutely. What's in it for me? And as leaders of companies, businesses, churches, families, whatever, it is part of our responsibility is to make sure that those people who are following, that their individual needs are considered and hopefully being met through the